The names Channon Christian and Hugh Christopher Newsom Jr. are seared into the collective memory of America, not merely as victims of a crime, but as symbols of an unfathomable depravity that shattered the peace of a Knoxville, Tennessee community in January 2007. Their brutal abduction, torture, rape, and murder represent a benchmark of human cruelty, an event so horrific it continues to reverberate through the legal system and the conscience of a nation. This extensive narrative aims to meticulously reconstruct the harrowing events, delve into the relentless pursuit of justice that followed, navigate the labyrinthine complexities of the legal battles, and ultimately, explore the profound and lasting impact of a tragedy that defied comprehension and shocked the world. Channon Gale Christian, a vibrant 21-year-old University of Tennessee student, was on the cusp of realizing her dreams. Born on the 29th of April, 1985 in Texas, her family relocated to Knoxville, Tennessee, when she was 12, where she quickly adapted to her new surroundings with her parents and older brother. Channon possessed an inherently friendly and outgoing nature, a warmth that allowed her to forge connections instantly and feel at home in her new school. Those who knew her often remarked on her ability to connect with nearly anyone, reflecting a kindness that would shape her future aspirations. With a major in sociology, she radiated a bright smile, possessed an infectious enthusiasm for life, and harbored a particular love for golf. Channon harbored a deep desire to pursue a career that would genuinely help others, leading her to enroll at the University of Tennessee. Her choice of institution was also driven by a strong desire to remain geographically close to her family, with whom she shared an incredibly tight bond. Despite this closeness, she was fiercely independent, managing 2 part-time jobs to support herself through college. It was during her studies that she met Chris Newsom, and they began dating. At the time, she was 21 and Chris was 23, working as a carpenter and already having established a commendable reputation for his skills in the community. On the 6th of January, 2007, Channon and Chris were looking forward to attending a friend's birthday party. That afternoon, Channon had gone to her friend's house, where Chris was expected to pick her up. He was running a little late, so Channon's friend proceeded to the party without her, leaving Channon to wait for Chris's arrival. Chris, prior to collecting Channon, had dropped off another friend at the very same party, but approximately an hour later, concern began to ripple among their friends at the party. Channon's location was only about a 10-minute drive away, yet neither she nor Chris had appeared. This absence seemed uncharacteristic. It wasn't like them to simply miss a close friend's celebration without communicating. After a period of anxious waiting, attempts to reach them by phone were made, but both went unanswered. As midnight approached, their anxiety peaked, prompting a few friends to drive to the apartment complex where Channon had been waiting. Upon arrival in the parking lot, Chris's truck was visible, but Channon's car, the one she had driven earlier, was nowhere in sight. Their friends, perhaps too optimistically, concluded the couple might have just decided to skip the party and return to their celebration. Earlier, Channon had called her mother, informing her that she would be home later than anticipated, as she and Chris had decided to spend the evening together, maybe dining out and watching a movie. She had promised her mother she'd be back around 3:30 a.m. However, that time came and went without Channon's return. Initially, her mother assumed Channon might have stayed overnight with friends or at Chris's place, so immediate panic was averted. But the next morning brought a call that irrevocably altered everything. Channon's boss reported she hadn't shown up for work. This prompted Channon's mother to contact Chris's parents, confirming he also hadn't returned home the previous night. With neither answering their phones, a shared sense of profound worry settled over both families and their friends. The situation felt profoundly unsettling. While Channon and Chris were adults, they consistently maintained contact with their parents and had never simply vanished overnight without a word. Channon, in particular, took her responsibilities seriously, making it inconceivable she would miss work without a valid reason. Their families began telephoning every hospital in the vicinity, but no one matching their descriptions had been admitted anywhere. Consequently, they sought assistance from the police. Yet the local department initially declined to open a case, saying that since both Channon and Chris were adults, families would have to wait 24 hours before filing a missing persons report. Refusing to passively wait, Channon's parents reached out to her phone company, hoping for assistance. To their relief, the company agreed to trace her phone's activity. They revealed that during the night, Channon had accessed her voicemail 3 times, and that was the last recorded activity before her phone switched off. The final signal had pinged off a cell tower located near North Cherry Street. This information only intensified her parents' anxiety. While Knoxville was generally considered a safe city, that particular area was known for its higher crime rate. The presence of Channon's phone in such an area made no sense. Driven by a desperate need for answers, her family commenced their own search of the neighborhood. After hours of meticulous driving, they finally located her car, parked just a couple of blocks from where her phone had last pinged. The moment Channon's family reached the vehicle, an immediate sense of unease settled upon them. All of her personal belongings were missing. Photos, her phone charger, everything she typically kept with her. The interior of the car appeared unusually dirty, a stark contrast to Channon's meticulous habit of maintaining a spotless vehicle. Even more unsettling, the driver's seat had been pushed all the way back, indicating someone considerably taller than Channon had been driving. It was unequivocally clear that Channon had not been the one behind the wheel. Following this disturbing discovery, her parents contacted the police once more, and this time, officers promptly responded. Upon their arrival, they observed something deeply concerning. The car's interior and door handles appeared to have been wiped down, as if someone had deliberately attempted to erase fingerprints. Another incongruous detail emerged: a crumpled, empty pack of cigarettes found inside the car, despite neither Channon nor Chris being smokers. While all signs pointed to the car potentially being stolen, investigators still had no discernible clue regarding Channon or Chris's whereabouts. Then, during a more thorough search of the vehicle, they finally unearthed a critical lead: an envelope wedged between the seats. It bore the address of a house situated in the same neighborhood. Even more significantly, forensic analysis revealed a fingerprint on the envelope, which was quickly matched to a man named Lamarcus Davidson, a convicted felon with an extensive criminal record. As it turned out, Davidson resided at the very address written on the envelope. Detectives immediately proceeded to the house, but it appeared deserted. Nevertheless, their strong belief that Channon and Chris might be in immediate danger provided them with legal grounds to enter without a warrant. The interior of the house was in disarray, but police swiftly located Channon's purse, her shoes, and several other personal items. They also discovered Chris's baseball cap and his driver's license, but the most horrifying revelation awaited them in the kitchen. As one of the officers cautiously lifted the lid of a trash can, he found something wrapped in a piece of cloth. Beneath it lay a human body. It was Channon. The case was immediately reclassified as a homicide investigation. Her body was transported to the medical examiner, and detectives were now consumed by 2 urgent questions. Where was Chris? And where was Lamarcus Davidson? One of those answers came swiftly. Moments after Channon's body was identified, police received communication from another department. Nearly 2 days prior, a railroad employee had discovered the body of an unidentified man near the train tracks. At that time, no identification had been possible, but now detectives gravely suspected it might be Chris. Soon after, a DNA test tragically confirmed their worst fears. The subsequent forensic examination of both Channon and Chris's bodies unveiled a truly horrifying picture. They both exhibited numerous injuries, including cuts, bruises, and other unambiguous signs of severe abuse. It was also unequivocally determined that both had been sexually assaulted. Chris succumbed to multiple gunshot wounds, while Channon's cause of death was definitively ruled as suffocation. Forensic experts discovered biological evidence on Channon's body that directly matched Lamarcus Davidson. His fingerprints were also found on the very trash bags used to wrap her remains. As if that wasn't enough, investigators also located spent shell casings inside Davidson's house, and those casings matched the bullets recovered from Chris's body. Armed with this irrefutable body of evidence, police harbored no doubt that Lamarcus was directly and criminally involved in the murders. Their efforts then focused entirely on locating and apprehending him. Detectives meticulously pulled Davidson's cell phone records and uncovered a pattern of frequent contact over the preceding days with a man named Eric. It didn't take long for police to track Eric down. Initially, he feigned ignorance regarding Lamarcus's whereabouts. However, as investigators explained the gravity of the suspicions against Lamarcus and the potential for Eric himself to face charges as an accomplice, his demeanor rapidly shifted, and he provided an address. According to Eric, Lamarcus had been hiding out in an empty house that was currently listed for sale. Eric further confessed that on the very same day Channon and Chris vanished, he and Lamarcus had robbed this vacant property. Police immediately proceeded to the indicated house and, sure enough, found Lamarcus inside. He was surrounded by discarded trash and empty food containers, and he had a firearm with him. But one particular detail stood out even more starkly. He was wearing Chris's sneakers. Officers apprehended him and took him in for questioning. From the very outset, he vehemently denied any involvement, then proceeded to repeatedly alter his narrative, offering a staggering 5 completely different versions of what had transpired, each contradicting the last. Initially, he feigned complete ignorance, claiming he had no idea what anyone was talking about. He then shifted to claiming Channon and Chris had been kidnapped by someone else, asserting his non-involvement. Later, he told detectives he had merely used the victim's car to drive around and sell drugs. Ultimately, Lamarcus never offered a full confession, but he did inadvertently provide police with several useful pieces of information. Based on his fragmented accounts, it became increasingly clear that more than one person must have been involved in the heinous murders. Detectives concurred with this theory, recognizing it as the most plausible explanation for the complexity of the crime. According to Lamarcus, the real killers were his half-brother, Latalvis Darnell Cobbins, and their mutual friend, George Giovanni Thomas. Detectives swiftly located both men and brought them in for questioning, along with Eric, who was now unequivocally being treated as an accomplice. None of them were eager to confess. However, through persistent interrogations, police uncovered compelling evidence, leading them to conclude that all 4 men had likely played a role in the crime. Furthermore, they realized they weren't alone. There was a 5th individual involved, an 18-year-old woman named Vanessa Lynn Coleman. Detectives located and took her into custody as well. With all 5 suspects now under arrest, the intense questioning continued. Eventually, as pressure mounted, they all began to turn on each other, pointing fingers and offering narratives designed to shift blame away from themselves. But even with their conflicting accounts, the steadily growing pile of forensic and circumstantial evidence meticulously gathered by detectives allowed them to piece together a coherent picture of what truly transpired that horrifying night. Based on all the evidence investigators collected, Lamarcus appeared to be the undisputed ringleader of the group. He was primarily involved in selling drugs, and on that fateful night, he had planned to steal a vehicle to facilitate his deliveries. He brought along 3 accomplices, plus Vanessa, and they set out to find a suitable car. As they drove through a residential complex, the very one where Channon was waiting, they spotted her car, with her sitting inside and Chris standing nearby. It was at that moment they made the chilling decision not just to steal the vehicle, but to abduct the couple as well. They forcibly took Channon and Chris into the car at gunpoint and drove them to Lamarcus's house. According to DNA evidence, both Lamarcus and Latalvis sexually assaulted the victims, and the abuse, along with other forms of torture and humiliation, continued for hours. Chris was kicked in his groin and beaten on the head, suffering extensive hemorrhaging. By the early morning hours, the attackers led Chris out of the house and took him to the railroad tracks, where they shot him multiple times, leaving his body there. His hands and feet were bound, he was blindfolded and gagged, and his body was doused with gasoline and set on fire. Then they returned to the house and continued tormenting Channon. She remained alive for nearly 2 full days, during which her friends and family had already commenced their desperate search for her, though her car had not yet been found. Ultimately, they killed her too, stuffing her body into a trash can and leaving it inside the house. Her body, including her battered genital area, was scrubbed with bleach, and the corrosive liquid was poured down her throat, all while she was still alive. She was then bound in a hog-tied fashion with curtains and bedding strips, her face tightly covered with a trash bag, and her body, naked except for a camisole and sweater, was tied in a fetal position and crammed into 5 large trash bags before being placed in a residential waste disposal unit in the kitchen. She suffocated slowly to death. Investigators also learned that Lamaricus didn't just steal Chris's sneakers. He also took his phone and some of Channon's personal items, which he later brazenly gave to his girlfriend as gifts. As for Vanessa, she adamantly insisted that she, too, was a victim, claiming she had been held at the house against her will. However, police discovered a diary in her home that completely contradicted her assertions. In it, Vanessa chillingly described the day's events as a wild adventure, and explicitly wrote that she genuinely enjoyed the experience. Ultimately, all of the suspects were charged with extensive lists of offenses, and the prosecution began the arduous process of preparing for trial. This preparation alone consumed more than 2 years. During this period, the defense attorneys successfully petitioned to have the trial moved to a different county. Their rationale was straightforward. The case had ignited a massive public outcry in Knoxville. The sheer horror of what had been inflicted upon this young couple had so deeply shocked the populace that the defense argued their clients could not possibly receive a fair trial in that city. Eventually, the court concurred, and the venue was changed. The first to face trial was Eric. Throughout the extensive investigation, police were never able to uncover solid proof that he had directly participated in the murders themselves, but they did amass sufficient evidence to demonstrate that he was aware of what was transpiring and facilitated the perpetrators. In the end, he received the maximum sentence for the charges against him at the time, 18 years in federal prison. Next came the trials of Lamaricus, Latalvis, and George. In a desperate and perverse attempt to defend them, their attorney posited the outrageous claim that Shannon and Chris had willingly participated in the horrific abuse they were subjected to. The jury predictably did not accept that preposterous story for a single moment, and all 3 men were found guilty. Lamaricus was sentenced to death, while Latalvis and George received life in prison. Vanessa's case proved to be somewhat more intricate. At first, she had been granted immunity in exchange for testifying against the others, but the court later ruled that her immunity was limited solely to the carjacking charges, not extending to the more severe charges related to murder and sexual assault. Consequently, Vanessa did ultimately face trial. She was eventually convicted and sentenced to 53 years in prison. In the immediate aftermath, it seemed that all those responsible had been brought to justice. However, not long after these initial verdicts were handed down, the case took a surprising and deeply unsettling turn. In 2011, the judge who had presided over all 5 trials resigned amidst a significant scandal. It came to light that he had been involved in an affair with a court employee and, more disturbingly, had been illicitly purchasing drugs from convicted criminals. Due to this severe breach of judicial ethics, a higher court made the decision to review several of the sentences he had issued, including those of Lamaricus, Vanessa, George, and Latalvis. This news sparked widespread outrage and understandable frustration among the victims' families and the public. In the end, prosecutors were able to successfully challenge the decisions concerning Lamaricus and Latalvis, meaning their original, severe sentences remained intact. However, the other 2, Vanessa and George, were granted new trials. Vanessa was once again found guilty of the same charges, but this time she received a reduced sentence of 35 years instead of 53. George also received a lighter sentence, making him eligible for parole after serving 51 years. Yet, these retrials of Vanessa and George paradoxically yielded consequences in another direction. During these new proceedings, the prosecution meticulously gathered a significant amount of new evidence that strongly suggested Eric had, in fact, taken an active and direct part in the abuse and murders. In 2019, he was subsequently hit with new state charges. This time, he was sentenced to life in prison, plus an additional 90 years. Considering his original federal sentence was just 18 years, this new ruling all but eliminated any realistic chance he had of ever being released from prison. Vanessa, on the other hand, became eligible for parole after serving just 7 years. However, all of her parole requests to date have been denied, and she remains behind bars. In the end, despite all the legal setbacks and reversals, those directly responsible for the murders of Channon and Chris were held accountable and received substantial prison time, although many still firmly believe every one of them deserved the death penalty. The gruesome nature of the crimes, coupled with the racial demographics of the victims, white, and the majority of the perpetrators, black, unfortunately led to the case being seized upon by white supremacist groups. These groups, primarily through online forums and rallies, attempted to falsely portray the murders as a race-based hate crime, despite authorities stating there was no evidence to support this. Knoxville Police Chief Sterling Owen, Jr. unequivocally declared, "We have no evidence to support the notion that this was a race-based crime. We see this as a cold-blooded murder." Investigators also pointed to evidence that the perpetrators socialized and dated white individuals, contradicting a racial motive. The victims' families, including Channon's father, Gary Christian, vehemently denounced these opportunistic attempts to exploit their tragedy for racial propaganda, expressing anger and sorrow at the distortion of their children's memory. Their unified stance helped to largely neutralize the impact of these divisive efforts. In the wake of their unimaginable loss, the families of Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom have channeled their profound grief into powerful advocacy and enduring remembrance, transforming their sorrow into a catalyst for positive change. In a significant legislative victory, former Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam signed the Chris Newsom and Channon Christian Acts into law in June 2014. Christopher's bill abolished the 13th juror practice, which required a judge to concur with a unanimous jury verdict. Channon's bill restricted the use of a victim's past allegations in court if irrelevant to the current case, aiming to prevent character assassination in legal proceedings. The Christian family also established the Channon Gale Christian Foundation, which provides annual scholarships to female graduates of Farragut High School attending the University of Tennessee. This foundation ensures that Channon's spirit of academic aspiration continues to inspire future generations. Similarly, Christopher's devoted parents, Hugh and Mary Newsom, honor his memory through the sponsorship of an annual Halls baseball tournament, a poignant tribute to his love for the sport he loved so dearly. The house where it all happened was eventually bought by a local company. It was torn down, and in its place a memorial was built to honor Channon and Chris. The University of Tennessee also established scholarships in their names, ones that are still active today. Gary Christian, Channon's father, has emerged as a compelling voice for resilience and the transformative power of faith. He has openly and courageously shared his deeply personal journey from the depths of overwhelming rage and despair to finding a profound sense of purpose and spiritual solace. His powerful and public testimony underscores not only the profound and pervasive impact of such heinous crimes, but also the arduous, often solitary path to healing and finding meaning in the face of unspeakable tragedy. The Newsoms, too, have found solace in their grandchildren, who help keep Chris's memory alive, ensuring that the next generation remembers the bright young man he was. It's also worth noting that Lamarcus's death sentence has yet to be carried out. Nearly 2 decades after the murders, he continues to reside on death row. The Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom case remains an indelible scar on the American psyche, a stark and chilling reminder of the extreme depths of human violence and the enduring pain inflicted upon victims' families. While the long and arduous journey for justice, in its legal and punitive forms, has largely reached its conclusion for the perpetrators, the emotional scars on the families and the broader community persist. Yet, within this profound tragedy, there lies an equally powerful testament to the remarkable resilience of the human spirit, the tireless pursuit of justice by dedicated law enforcement and prosecutors, and the enduring power of remembrance to transform unspeakable loss into a beacon of advocacy, hope, and a renewed commitment to a safer, more just future for all.